Welcome to Political Takedown. Welcome back to the channel, guys. This is CommonSense, right? We are starting a brand new series with this being episode 1. This is Political Takedown. In this series of videos, we're going to be aiming to just take to TikTok, take to videos in general, and we're just going to be taking to TikTok and just videos in general to give refutations and debunking some of the stupid garbage that leftists and woke people alike, this type of thing, say. So with that said, let's begin. All right, our first video here is from a creator. You can't really see it. His name is Radio Flyer. Old people and politicians are scared of Gen Z. So claim 1 here is old people and politicians are scared of Gen Z. I can't wait to get into this. Let's check it out.
Old people and politicians are scared shitless of Gen Z, and I think it's great.
All right, first off, just straight up assertion. Where's the proof and evidence that politicians are scared of Gen Z? All right, I'm going to need some data on that. That's just a generalized statement. That's just an assertion. I need some proof and some evidence to demonstrate that claim, sir. On top of that, while we're on the topic of Gen Z, 1/3 of Generation Z has been aborted already. So, sir, imagine how much more scared we would be if we were scared in the first place. This is a hypothetical. I'm just granting it for the sake of argument. Imagine how much more scared in peeing in our pants we'd be if just half of that were still alive today. But no, the allies that you guys could have been mass producing, you decided to slaughter in the womb. Continue, though.
Have you ever noticed that it's pretty much only old people and politicians who use the term woke? And they don't like people who are woke. What's the definition of woke? From the Oxford Dictionary, it means alert to and concerned about social injustice and discrimination. So these old geezers don't give a shit about those things. And they don't want you to vote. In fact, some politicians are actively trying to keep young people from voting any way they can.
All right, we're going to go through this point by point. I was being, kind of hyperbolic and a little disingenuous at the beginning with that claim that politicians are scared of Gen Z. Kind of not. Like I said, data. So one of the first things he said after that was that nothing but old people use the term woke. For one, even if I were to grant it, what the hell does this prove? Okay, I know this is just kind of a random thing that's bundled into this video, but who cares who uses the word? I know young people that use the word. I know old people that use the word. I know leftists. I know Republicans. They all use the word woke. This has literally nothing to do with anything at all. But the next claim is a little bit more fun to mess with because he said, people don't like wokeness. And I would agree. There's a good reason for this. Wokeness is associated very highly with this idea of canceling people, cancel culture, shutting down free speech. The idea that they have to fight fascism by going out and shutting down free speech and shutting people down, which is exactly what fascists would do, ironically. And obviously, wokeness and leftist ideologies go hand in hand. And most people don't like the far left and this leftist ideology. Obviously, they support aborting 1.3 million babies a year. They support drugging and indoctrinating your kids into the LGBTQ ABC 123 cult. Using children as lab rats to test pharmaceutical drugs when we don't know the full extent of the long-lasting damages that they're going to have on children with these hormone blockers and these awful medicines that they're giving to children. All because they don't feel 100% like a girl or 100% like a boy because they're all just getting indoctrinated. So yeah, it's no wonder that not only do Republicans, not only do far-right conservatives, but just normal people and people who are in the middle, they don't like wokeness. It's just a terrible ideology. It's terrible for the country. It benefits no one. And obviously he defined wokeness is it means to be alert and concerned about social injustice and discrimination. And that's a fine definition, I suppose. But you got to understand there's a definition for woke, but then there's sort of the colloquially definition, and it's really not the colloquial definition, it's more just the everyday practice of the word. So first of all, there's no racial discrimination of any minority in the country, not socially, not epistemic, nothing like that whatsoever. There's nothing that disenfranchises a select race of people in this country from thriving and doing great things. And I think it's very damaging to set that precedent for these people, because they're just going to think and live with a victim mentality and look the world through a lens of a victim. And you are going to probably hurt them in the long run from growing and developing and being what they want to be. And then the last point I want to rebut is this notion that there are some politicians who don't want young people to vote. I think it's a perfectly reasonable stance to want to, let's just, for instance, say, raise the voting age from 18 to 25. 25, of course, is when your brain fully stops developing, and then from there, it goes downhill. Like, why is it a problem to not want fresh 18-year-old dum-dums vote and possibly cancel out like 45-year-old men who have all this life experience and know what the hell they're talking about? And you can't say, well, if you raise the age, then you're just going to be disenfranchising all these Americans who, should have a voice. But the thing is, we're already arbitrarily doing that because the voting age is 18. And we're already disenfranchising people who, might be working jobs and paying for taxes already, like 17, 16-year-olds. So it's already arbitrary, so we can just arbitrarily move it to a different age as well. Like, either way, you're already disenfranchising people from voting. And like I said, dude, it is a perfectly reasonable stance to hold to want to raise the voting age. I honestly think we should. I think we should raise the voting age to some degree, or maybe at least make it different. Maybe not necessarily raise the age, but I don't think everyone should get a vote. I think it should either be by one household. I think it should get raised, something along this motion. I think the idea that every single person gets a vote, whether they have a whole bunch of stake in the game, whether they have a whole bunch of life experience versus a whole bunch of people who don't have stake in the game, or a whole bunch of people who don't, people who live off the daddy government versus people who work their butts off for their paycheck. I don't think everyone should just have the vote just for the hell of it. So all of these points have been rebutted. Next up, creator, we got a dude named Loyal. Let's see it.
Tell you about homosexuality. Despite what you've been told and what you may have heard, homosexuality has a divine purpose on earth. Homosexuality is actually common all throughout nature. It is very natural. It is a homophobia in humanity that's not natural. In indigenous times, these beings were revered, looked at as gods and goddesses, because they were understood to have brought a divine message to a community. These beings aren't to be outcasted. These beings are to be worshipped. These beings came here to help us. The homosexual spirit is here on earth because there's an imbalance between masculine and feminine energy. These beings came to help restore that. Make sure y'all follow for more. Reflected light from the Most High, Chief, Three God. Peace to the gods. I love myself.
First of all, he says homosexuality is natural because it's in nature. First of all, just because it is natural in nature does not mean that it's natural for human beings to do, nor does it mean that human beings ought to do that. For example, also seen in nature, we have necrophilia. We have parent creatures, animals, eating their offspring. That's very natural in nature. Does it mean we should replicate it? And no, I'm not comparing them, but if you're going to arbitrarily state that, well, homosexuality in nature is natural, so therefore humans are fine to do it, then you have to make some sort of correlate or distinction between that and, for instance, necrophilia. Because if the argument would be homosexuality doesn't harm, well, I would just say necrophilia doesn't harm. If you're screwing a dead body, can you tell me who you're harming? And before I get turds and actual people who can't track what's going on here, no, I'm not saying that necrophilia is okay. And no, I'm not comparing them. I'm giving them an analogy. Because the argument is, if you're going to arbitrarily say one thing is okay because it's in nature, why stop there? Why isn't everything that you can't demonstrate harm okay for humans to do because, well, it's in nature? That's a super easy one to rebut, and I've heard it rebutted many times. And I reject this notion that the bigotry towards homosexuality is what's unnatural, when that has been the most natural thing from the beginning of time. The only reason it's looked at all in a positive, semi-positive light today is because we've had 20 years of all these gay activists trying to advocate for gay rights and all this garbage. When, for one, I think most people today still automatically get this icky, gross feeling of homosexuality, because the truth is, it is not natural. It is against God's design, and most people just see it naturally that it's a disgusting, vile, sodomine act. So actually, I think it's completely opposite. That is actually the most natural response and the most natural instinctual response that comes from people, and it's forever been that way since the beginning of time. And even in the most accepting time that we are of homosexuality, most people still have that instinctual, this is disgusting thought of it. And then, of course, the last point is literally nothing but slop and gobbledygook. Talking about a homosexual spirit come because there's an imbalance between femininity and masculine traits, or whatever the hell he said. I'm going to need proof and evidence. I'm going to need proof and evidence for that claim, sir. That whole last part doesn't even need to be taken seriously, because it was clear just rage bait and just silly gobbledygook, really. Second person rebutted. Super easy.
When you live outside of what's often cited as traditional Christian values, you are labeled
Last
as
up, we got a
woke.
tranny.
Can you tell me what woke means? No? Didn't see that coming. They call us fascists, so we call them woke. Difference is, one of them has an actual meaning. So let me tell you what it really means. In essence, it's existing outside of cultural, Christian, religious traditions. When that argument falls apart, they tell you that you're defying nature, even though religion itself goes against nature. It goes against evolution and the science behind it. You know all of this. Nobody's got a problem with you living your traditional Christian pipe dream, but that doesn't mean everybody has to as well. And then any kind of exploration outside of that is automatically shunned by these people. In conclusion, it means nothing. It's a loose-fitting idiom at best.
All right, I'm going to address the tranny in the room. First claim I want to talk about is how they tell them they're defying nature, and then they say we're defying nature because we're rejecting evolution or something. For one, even granting the argument, if we were defying nature, that wouldn't mean you aren't defying nature either, dummy. Even granting it for argument's sake, that still wouldn't mean that you aren't defying nature. And for one, there are many Christians that believe in evolution. You got to understand that evolution by itself doesn't contradict the Christian religion. But you also got to understand the way this tranny is putting it, evolution is not like this big confirmed thing. So it's a theory. There is evidence and proof that we have small feats of evolutionary design from creatures like the Galapagos birds, where they evolutionized or whatever. I don't know what the term is, but they evolved, I guess. They evolved, and their beaks changed a different sort of form. You know, their beaks changed. However, there is not evidence to suggest that creatures turned into totally different creatures, transformed into these totally different beings. It's the same thing with like monkeys to humans. There's no evidence, there's no interconnector, there's no medium link between monkeys to humans. Every time we find fossils and remains of these creatures, we either find monkeys, 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 or humans. There's not been any evidence to suggest there is even any middle link. And as I said, there's no evidence of evolution theory to suggest that, beings totally transformed and warp into these other different future creatures. So that is not a biblical principle, so that wouldn't contradict the religion, even if we had that today. And as I said, there are people who do believe in evolution to an extent with the religion. And again, even if we're granted all that, that doesn't take away that your crazy, illogical, delusional, trans ideology isn't natural, because it's not. Having gay sex is not natural. What is natural is for man and woman to come together, congregate, form a covenant, a marriage under the one true God, Jesus Christ, making a family, and then leaving their previous one to, form that family and, create that family dynamic and, uphold the Christian worldview within that family. So that is the last one, debunked and rebutted. Guys, that was political takedown. Let me know in the comments below how I did. Even though I just mollywhopped the floor with them, I do love them, and I think they should come to Jesus Christ, the one true God. I think he can rescue and save them from all of their sins, as he's already done on the cross. They just have to accept that gift. Consider liking and subscribing to the channel for more content just like this. We post every single day, Monday through Saturday. Jesus Christ is King. Repent and believe in the gospel, everyone.